Welcome back, my friends. So my previous computer absolutely shit itself. So here we are on a new rig and it has some power. So there'll be no more lag if you're a subscriber. It should be much more enjoyable. We're going to be able to watch it in, high definition, 60 frames per second. Actually, I don't think I'm recording in 60 frames. Never mind that, but it's going to be much better. Yeah, it was a bit of a lemon. A bit like this drink. Pepsi Max lemon flavor. It's great. As they say, life's a lemon, and I want my money back. I'm kidding. Life's lit, don't quit. I don't think I've ever said lit in my life. I've had a bunch of people requesting that I bring the suit back. But unfortunately, that look, that style was stolen by this guy. Except he's got some pants on, so no more suit. And don't worry, pants are still gone. If you haven't heard, creating a quantum-proof VPN called CalVPN. You should check it out in the description. That's all I'm going to say. Go have a read. Last thing, now that we have a more powerful rig, might be able to do some streaming on Twitch. So look out for that. Makes me a little bit nervous, but I'll give it a shot soon. Let's get into this video, shall we? I can't wait to watch this in high definition. All right, guys, let's get into it. Let's see how much better this rig performs.
Look around you. Where are you? Where is this place you're occupying? Somewhere in a room.
I don't know, but I think you're in my simulation. I am the center of the universe.
Maybe in a city, on a continent, on a planet orbiting a star in a galaxy among billions.
No.
But where is all of that? While this may feel like a daft question, it turns
Hope you guys are ready for an existential crisis or two.
out that the concept of an absolute position is something humans made up. In a nutshell, the universe is a big bag of space that has things in it. If someone removed all these things, the stars and planets and black holes and dust, there would just be empty space left. In empty space, the concept of having a position loses all meaning. Empty space is uniform, the same everywhere. The space we occupy is not like a stage under our feet. We can't mark specific points or staple something to space-time as an anchor. Without things, there is no position.
The quality of this video in this new recording setup is just like a whole different experience. It's remarkable.
Ever only at a position in relation to something else. Which also means that things we take for granted, like up and down, are actually relative too. Okay, let's fill the universe up with things again and try to find out where you are right now, relative to everything else.
It's making me dizzy. It's doing a great job of disorienting you and just making you have an out-of-body experience.
Let's start this video at a familiar place and then get increasingly weird. From your perspective, the world is seemingly flat and you can move in 3 dimensions. It's what physicists call a frame of reference, the perspective you have of the universe and how you see things
moving. You can actually move in 4 because we treat the 4th dimension as time.
Around you, where your up and down is. Your frame of reference is correct for you, but not for the rest of the universe. Around 5 kilometers from you, where the horizon begins, the ground noticeably curves away from you. If you could see through the ground, you'd see people from below or sideways. But they don't fall down off the planet because gravity doesn't actually pull them down. Down is an illusion of your reference frame. To Earth's reference frame, gravity just pulls in. But for humans there is an up and down because within our frame of reference that just makes sense. Which is also why we think that the planet itself has an up and down, north and south, and we made our maps accordingly. But an observer looking at the solar system might disagree. Our maps make sense to us because we're used to them, not because they are correct. Okay, so this is step 1, on what feels like a flat surface but is actually a sphere. But this sphere is always moving, never staying in one position. Earth is orbiting a star, the sun at the center of...
I want to talk about the geometry of the universe as well, because how he's talking about, the fact that Earth's round, it just reminds me of a story. But we'll talk about it soon.
The solar system. While we usually imagine this as pretty orderly, someone looking at us from the outside would see something pretty messy. To see this more clearly, we'll exaggerate all these movements. This is not to scale. First of all, our orbit really is an ellipse, so we spend half the year sinking a little bit closer to the sun, speeding up, and half the year rising up a bit and slowing down. And the ellipse itself changes its shape every 100,000 years too. And in another cycle of 112,000 years, the ellipse itself is drifting, which at least creates a beautiful shape.
These are what's called
In the
Milankovitch
end,
cycles.
we get an orbital path that looks like a wobbly circle with wavy edges. And it gets worse as the moon now starts to mess things up too. As the moon is a pretty massive thing, it pulls on Earth. Both objects orbit their common center of gravity that lies around 4,700 kilometers off to the side of Earth's core. In practice, this means that as the moon orbits Earth, it's jerking Earth around a bit, enough to make it jiggle. Okay, so you're standing on the surface of...
Okay, I think it's going to get way more complicated in a second, but I just wanted to add, did you guys hear that Earth's rotation, its spin, is actually increasing? I mean, in the long run, it's actually slowing down. So like over a period of like a century, it's actually slowing down by like a couple milliseconds. It could have something to do with the processes in the inner and outer core, the oceans, tides, you know, or even the changing climate. But currently, we're recognizing it actually is increasing, and we had the shortest day in recorded history just the other day. It was something like 1.56 milliseconds quicker. And so this is a problem, guys. This is a big problem. We don't know what's causing this. Some think it really could be due to the Chandler wobble, which it relates to the variation in the way Earth, the axis of rotation. So it's like if you imagine a table, those little things that spin on like a tabletop. You know how like when they gain momentum or lose momentum, they start to like quiver. That's what the Chandler wobble essentially is. And it results in some of this really weird motion through space. But anyway, I just wanted to bring it up because like if this increasing spin and shortening of days keeps going, we're probably going to have to introduce like a negative leap second, which we haven't done before. And this could be a big problem because all of like our software infrastructure and things like that, you know, this is a big deal to introduce a negative leap second. It'll just crash programs. Like it'll corrupt data due to the time of the data storage. It would not be good. And Meta, you know, the big Facebook company is suggesting they're recommending we definitely don't introduce a negative leap second. They're really trying to push back on it. But we kind of need to if this spin keeps happening, because we need to keep our measurements of, you know, the Earth going around the sun, the rate, in correspondence with measurements from atomic clocks. So, you know, stuff you Meta, we're probably going to have to introduce a negative leap second if this keeps happening. But anyway, let's keep going.
Of a rotating planet that is jiggling around the sun in an elliptical orbit that changes a bit every year. But who's to say the Earth is right? From the perspective of the sun, the plane of the solar system is arbitrary. It's defined as the plane the Earth orbits in because that is convenient for us. In reality, the other planets are just a little bit inclined with respect to our plane. From their point of view, we're the ones with a slightly bent orbit. But this isn't it, far from it. The solar system as a whole is orbiting the center of the Milky Way galaxy. If we look at the Milky Way, we can clearly make out a galactic plane in which the solar system orbits the center every 230 million years. But of course, it's not that simple. First of all,
the last time we made a rotation, dinosaurs still roamed the Earth.
The plane of the solar system is not aligned with the plane of the galaxy. Nothing really is. Just like the planets in the solar system orbit the sun on their own planes, so do all the stars orbiting the galactic center. The solar system as a whole is tilted about 60 degrees towards the galactic plane, speeding through space at almost 8.
I also just want to say this, beautiful animation, but the way he's presenting the galaxy actually could be incorrect. I'm not going to talk about this now because I want to talk about other things, but the way he's representing the spiral, it actually could be more of like a bar. So you should look into that because, yeah, this could be wrong. And there could actually be some other things that he's not, like it's not perfectly flat. It's actually kind of like distorted. Like I can't do it with my hands. Maybe I should put a picture up or something. But it's not perfectly flat. So anyway, let's keep going. There's an ad about the pop-up.
Million kilometers.
I discovered the 8 immortal kings of Sumeria lived a total of 241,200 years.
Oh, Jesus. Get out of here, man.
I discovered through my research that these type of...
Someone in the center of the galaxy would see the orbits of the planets moving through space in a helix shape, which you can imagine as a corkscrew motion on the tilted plane of the solar system relative to the plane of the galaxy. This orientation in space means that sometimes the planets are sort of in front of the Sun as it orbits around the galactic core. Let's just look at this for a moment. There is a strange and eerie beauty about how our planets and the Sun move through space. Do you feel a bit dizzy? It gets worse.
Yes.
This is still not the whole story, because the mass of the galactic disk is constantly pulling on the solar system too. Like a drunk dolphin, we're diving down and shooting up hundreds of light years through the galactic plane 10 times every orbit along arcs thousands of light years long. We haven't mapped this motion out completely, as it takes the solar system tens of millions of years to go up and back once, and well, humanity is not that old. Let's look at your relative position again.
There's even more motion going on, but look, I think that's enough.
Planet tilted towards the Sun, jiggled around by the Moon, in a solar system tilted towards the galactic plane, moving forward in a helical shape, diving up and down through the plane.
He's done a brilliant
But where
job.
is up in a galaxy? At this point, the frame of reference becomes a bit arbitrary and pointless because of the nature of the universe at this scale. The Milky Way is part of a galaxy group that appears to be part of greater structures like the Laniakea supercluster, which itself is part of the gigantic Pisces-Cetus supercluster complex, and finally a galactic filament that spans hundreds of millions of light years in all directions and orientations. Someone looking right at us from that far away will only see the end of greatness.
Okay, I think we're approaching the end, so maybe we should talk about the geometry of the universe, because this has been popping in my head this whole video, and I want to talk a little bit about it, because, like, it's pretty mind-blowing. Like, you might have heard some physicists say that the universe is flat, and it's like, what the hell do you mean the universe is flat? So let's talk about this. So first, let's maybe define flatness, right? Like, so thought experiment. Imagine yourself in a room, right? And you're going to make 4 90-degree turns in a square room, right? So you're going to end up back where you started, right? So that means the room, you could say the room is flat. This is what you call Euclidean geometry. So now imagine you're on the surface of Earth, which I hope you are. How many 90-degree turns do you have to make to get back where you started? This is an interesting and a bit of a trick question. And actually, this reminds me of a famous question that Elon would ask his employees before he hired them. It was a riddle. And if they got it right, apparently he would hire them. And if they didn't, yeah. So I'm going to ask you this and see if you can answer it without Googling it, and then leave it down under. So, thought experiment. Imagine you're walking somewhere on the surface of the Earth. You walk 1 mile, which way is it, south? And then you walk 1 mile west, and then you walk 1 mile north. And you end up back where you started. Where are you on the Earth? Leave it down under. I'm not going to give you the answer. And then moving on further from that, you can actually go to an even more complex surface. I mean, I'll just tell you this one, I think. Imagine if you're walking inside a crater. How many 90-degree turns do you have to make to get back to where you started? Well, it's actually more than 4. So, yeah, and so, like, now if you imagine doing this same sort of experiment in the universe, imagine Elon's built you one of his special rocket ships, or one of Jeff Bezos is like that odd shape, and it could travel very fast, right? And how many 90-degree turns would you have to make to get back to where you started? It's not 3, it's not 5, it has to be 4. So this is why, the universe is flat, and it's pretty intuitive, right? Like, that's what you would assume. But, we weren't absolutely sure of this assumption, so we wanted to test it. And there's actually a pretty ingenious way we can test this, and it's all thanks to the CMB, the cosmic microwave background radiation. So what is this? It's basically the first light in the universe. So 380,000 years after the Big Bang, the universe was about 2,700 degrees Celsius, and at this point, it had cooled down just enough to allow photons to move freely through the universe. The universe essentially became transparent. And so this was the first light in the universe, right? And you might see some reports about JWST going all over the internet saying, like, we've seen the furthest thing ever in the universe, and it's just so not true. Like, we're seeing some pretty far galaxies that are breaking records, but they're nowhere near as far as the cosmic microwave background radiation, which is also an observation. So yeah, don't, lots of misinformation out there. But coming back to what we were talking about, so this cosmic microwave background radiation, right? This where do we go from here? So you've probably heard about how the universe is expanding, right? And because this light was released, right all the way back there, so it's been traveling through the universe for nearly 13.8 billion years, and it's been getting stretched through that time. So these photons have now been stretched all the way into the microwave spectrum, and so they're about 2.7 Kelvin now, which is what we say the temperature of the universe is. That's the background temperature, which is pretty neat. And if you're confused by that expansion, like how I said, 13.8 billion years is the age of the universe, but you might know that the universe is actually more like 93 to 94 billion light years across. That's from this expansion, and it's accelerating. But coming back to this background temperature, well, we have some incredible telescopes that can actually look at tiny variations in this background temperature. And something that always blows my mind when I think about it is that these temperature variations that we see all around us, and this light is coming from everywhere, by the way. It's another fascinating thing. The tiny variations in this temperature correspond to the large-scale structure of the universe. Just think about that. A region that was a fraction of a degree warmer in this image you can now see, which is a real image Planck took, has now become a vast galaxy cluster, hundreds of millions of light years across. That always blows my mind to think about. So what we realized when it comes to the topology of the universe is that if the universe had any curvature at all, we'd actually see distortions in this temperature variation compared to the actual size of these structures we see today. And Planck basically saw nothing. We saw no distortions, and this suggests that the universe is not curved, it is indeed flat. So this isn't quite true though. Like, the curvature just falls within error bars of that correspond with the universe being flat, consistent with. And so, you could imagine that we create some super Planck telescope one day, and it doesn't indeed measure some curvature. So the thing here is, if the error bars get smaller, this actually means that the universe's minimum volume gets bigger. So yeah, there's one thing to note here, is that this doesn't really help us figure out if the universe is finite or infinite. We don't actually know this. We do know that it's at least 100 times larger in volume than what we're currently seeing, which is just the observable universe. So that's something to consider. So we say the universe is flat. This means that parallel lines stay parallel, 90-degree turns are true 90-degree turns, and everything makes sense. But, when we gaze up at the night sky, and you imagine that the universe stretches out in every direction infinitely far, well, that mental model that we all kind of have, you should challenge it. Might not be correct. There was a time when everyone thought Earth was flat, and Earth having curvature, Earth being a sphere, to those people was just completely unfathomable. And not many people think about the curvature of the universe. Well, there's actually more than just a spherical shape that it could be. It could, in fact, actually be other three-dimensional shapes. It could be hyperbolic. Mathematicians like to say it's easy to get lost in hyperbolic space. You'd really want to be careful if you're walking away from your friend. It'd be very easy to get lost because things get exponentially smaller very quickly. And but anyway, so we really could still, the universe really might not be flat. We could be living in a spherical or even a hyperbolic universe, and this is because even in spherical or hyperbolic things, there are small regions which appear flat. So that's what we could be, we could be looking at a very small region of a hyperbolic or a spherical universe, and it just looks flat because we're looking at such a small region. Anyway, that's enough of this. Let's get back to the video and finish it off, and then we'll talk about Boltzmann brains.
All stuff appears homogeneous, the same everywhere. Just like with empty space, when everything looks the same, who's to say anyone's view is better than anyone else's? We've reached the end of our little exercise in cosmic humility. Let's make the journey backwards again, from the indescribably large to the really large to our galactic home, to our galaxy, to the solar system diving up and down through the Milky Way, to the jiggle of existence. And finally,
Jiggle
back
of
to
existence.
you right now, watching this video. If this is all a bit much, don't feel bad. The scale of the universe is brain-crushing, and trying to keep track of how everything is oriented or decide where the best up and down is hard. But it doesn't really matter, because it doesn't change where you are. You're already in the best spot you possibly could be, right here, right now. For all you care,
Beautiful.
nothing can stop you from being right at the center of your own little universe.
Oh, ain't that the truth? Just an FYI, it's really not correct to say that we're at the center of the universe. The only thing that's privileged about our position, essentially, is that nearby objects are actually the oldest objects we can see, and that the furthest objects are actually the youngest. And also that the expansion rate of the universe nearby is lower than currently than the expansion rate of the universe we see for the further objects, and that the light of nearby objects is less redshifted and less dominated by the cosmological component of redshift than those further objects. I guess the universe is centered on us in the sense that the amount of time that's passed since the Big Bang and the distances we can observe out to are finite. And what we can observe is likely just a small fraction of what's really out there. And I'm sure we'll talk about this. So it's a pretty profound question to ask, where's the center of the universe? But it's probably more profound, that there is no center. And that'll do for today's video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you subscribe. Go check out CalVPN in the description. I'll see you next time.